You're listening to The Flickcast, a pop culture podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and joining me is my esteemed co-host, Joe Dilworth. Hello, Joe. How are you today?
Wow, I don't know if I can live up to the esteemed part, but that's setting the
Yeah,
bar kind of high.
I said esteemed one other time, and I figured that I would try it again and see how it goes. I think you are esteemed, and you're well known. I mean, you're a book editor and a writer and a podcaster, and you have another podcast about Highlander, which people watch, and you did and
True,
people ask you to
true.
speak at conventions and stuff. I mean, you're kind of a big deal.
I don't know. I'm a mid-level deal at best, if even that.
Well, I did
So
qualify it by saying kind of a big deal.
kind of a big deal. I mean, it's very it's well. Yesterday, I would say I was definitely steamy because it was very warm and a lot of what do you call that? See, I'm forgetting words already. See, I'm not
Oh,
esteemed.
this is going well.
Yeah. Anyway, how
It
are
was
you?
uh, good. Just we don't have to talk about my medical problems. I mean, they're minor, but I got a needle in my foot the other day. That was fun. But so if you
That
ever
was on purpose, though. That
that
wasn't
was on purpose,
accidental.
yeah.
Right. Okay.
If you ever have problems with your feet, like plantar fasciitis or whatever, then a shot of cortisone in your foot is apparently the cure, or at least a mitigator. And I feel so much better today. So it's exciting stuff. And not being able to walk was kind of annoying.
Yeah,
So
that could be a little annoying.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was kind of literally a pain, and all this time I've made fun of people. Well, I don't know if I've made fun of them, but I thought about it as like, oh, bone spurs. That's a total cop out, and I'm talking about one person in particular.
Yes.
But I have to say, not being able to walk without excruciating pain in your heel. I mean, I kind of understand it
It's
now,
a good
maybe.
thing.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so lots of stuff going on. Some Star Trek
So,
news.
yes.
Yeah, I don't want to go into politics today.
No, no, no.
Lots of some good Star Trek news. A good episode of Marvel's What If, especially if you like the undead, which I do, and
Yes.
of course, a brand new trailer for Matrix Resurrections, which is pretty awesome, and uh, and all that kind of thing, which I'm sure. And then we're going to bring back an old segment which we loved, but we're going to bring back picks today, so
Yes.
that's kind of cool too.
Yes.
We're going to bring that back.
Absolutely.
But before we get into that, let's tell the people where they can find the show. They can find the show at Apple Podcast, at Spotify, at Google Podcasts, and wherever you find things like that. And you can find our Patreon at patreon.com/theflickcast. And
Yes.
you can throw the show a couple bucks if you want to, or just listen for free like you probably are now, which is fine. We're just doing
That's
this for
fine.
the fun of
Totally
it.
fine. Yep.
Totally fine. And then if you could be so kind, though, a rating or a review. A rating is fine, but a review on Apple Podcasts in particular would be helpful. The more stars, the better. But you know what? If you can do it on Spotify, that's fine, or Google, that's fine too. We appreciate all input.
That's right.
Thank you.
Ratings and
And good
reviews
night.
cost you nothing. So,
Just a moment of your time. So
yes.
if you
Yes.
like the show or you enjoy it or it's a good distraction when you're on the toilet, then give us give us
Don't-
some stars.
I don't want to know if you listen to the show on the toilet. I really don't.
You know what? As long as people listen, I don't care where they do it. I'm not going
I
to
guess
tell
that's
you.
true.
I'm not going to tell you where to enjoy my show or the show.
there you go. I guess that's fair.
I'm not. I don't feel it necessary to invade people's privacy to that level. So
No, that's true. We're not the government.
we're not the government. Wait. Anyway. All right. So you are excited about Star Trek. So you should talk about Star Trek real quick. I mean, I'm excited about Star Trek too, but also not Star Trek 2, although that's a good movie. But
It is, yes.
oh, before we get back to Star Trek, I should say I made a mistake last week.
Oh,
I misidentified a Star Trek episode. It was not Turnabout Intruder, the episode title. Now, see, I'm going to fuck it up. I was going to have it ready. But anyway, I was wrong about the title of that episode where Kirk fights the Romulans in the Bird of Prey, like the submarine movies. that I
Oh,
love so
yes,
much.
yes.
It's not Turnabout Intruder. I thought about that one because that's the last episode of Star Trek
correct.
in the original
Yes.
series, and I got the title wrong. But I can't remember the name of the title of the other one now. So
And I'm blanking on it right now, too. Somebody will tell us, though, I'm sure.
this was not a good correction. In other words.
Well, it was a correction, but you just didn't have the thing ready to
I just don't have the
correct
thing ready to correct it with. Yeah, it was not that episode. So anyway, maybe I'll cut this part out. We'll see. I'm just kidding. So all right. So Star Trek news. Go.
Yes, so recently, September 8th, in fact, was designated Star Trek Day because September 8th is the day that the original series and the whole Star Trek thing started way back when, back in 1966, in fact. So there were some virtual panels and announcements and things for the various Star Trek series that are going on. Because weirdly enough, they're not all canceled, and Alex Kurtzman isn't fired. But hey,
Okay,
that's
okay, we get it. We get it.
that's a good thing because I like Star Trek. So
Me too.
they released the premiere date for Star Trek Discovery season 4, which is November 18th. So mark your calendars. They had some good trailers for the animated series that are currently airing and about to air, Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy, which are pretty fun. I mean, I know people have mixed feelings about animated shows, especially franchise animated shows, but Lower Decks especially is just a lot of fun. So you should check it out if you haven't. They also had a nice trailer for Picard season 2, and at the same time announced that it's already been renewed for a season 3, which is great.
Yeah, they got
Not canceled again.
Not canceled. Yeah, Picard season 3, that looks so good. I love Patrick Stewart, and Q is coming back and everything. That's pretty cool. Balance of Terror is the name of the episode.
Yes, there you go. Okay.
I don't know why I don't remember that. I'm just stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Star Trek, and the fact that I couldn't remember that was annoying. It's been annoying me the entire week when I realized I got it wrong. So sorry.
Like, no. So yeah, and yeah, Picard season 2, Q is back. There's time travel shenanigans, which I always enjoy, alternate universe stuff, and apparently they spend a bit of time in the present, 21st century Earth, which is always kind of cool to see, I think. So that'll be a lot of fun. The big news, of course, if that wasn't enough, was they finally announced who the various cast members of Star Trek Strange New Worlds are playing on the Strange New World show, which will premiere next year. Again, as a reminder, this is the Christopher Pike show with Anson Mount, Rebecca Romijn as number 1, and Ethan Peck as Spock. Surprisingly, there are some previous characters that were on the original series that are going to be main characters on Strange New Worlds. We've got Dr. Mbenga, who appeared briefly in the first season, a few episodes here and there as a kind of a backup doctor to McCoy on the original series. More prominent here, of course. And then Christine Chapel, which I find this interesting because if you consider the computer voice, number 1, and Christine Chapel, this show will have 3 characters that were played by Majel Barrett Roddenberry, now played by different actors, of course, and not the same actor. So that'll be kind of cool. And the big news that I'm really excited about, and I think will be a lot of fun, is Celia Rose Gooding has announced that she is playing Cadet Uhura.
Yeah.
So that I thought was really cool, and it will be fun to have that character have more of a spotlight and find out more about her. I think that'll just be awesome.
I'm confused though. If I recall, Nurse Chapel was introduced in the second season of the original series.
I mean, maybe she was in the first season.
No, I don't think so. I think she's in the second season only. But it's hard. I'm trying to remember. But I think that. But that's okay because she could like Chekhov in Star Trek 2 was like, yes. I never forget a face. I mean, he's just in the crew. He just wasn't prominent, right? You could say that Chekhov was always on the Enterprise during the first season. We just never saw him. He was like the relief crew or something. Nurse Chapel,
maybe she transferred to another ship temporarily or something like that.
Maybe, or she was on the Enterprise the whole time. Or that's true. Yeah, she was on the Enterprise with Pike and then left and then came back. That's possible too. So. But then I also got the impression that, at least in the original series, that she'd never met Spock before, but then fell in love with him because he's so amazing. So,
well, yeah.
Because like in like a muck time, she like brings him soup and he like throws it against the wall, and she's like, "Oh, Mr. Spock." And McCoy and Kirk, of course, are giving her shit about it because girly crushes on Spock aren't going to do anything.
No, she was Christine Chapel appeared in the 4th episode of the original series, season 1, The Naked Time. She was there, so.
Oh, all right, that's good. Yeah, for some reason I thought she was like prominently introduced though in the second season, but obviously I'm wrong. Again, about Star Trek, amazing.
Well, they actually eventually gave her a compelling story, and the reason why she joined Starfleet to find her missing husband, basically. So,
right,
and they had an episode based on that. So
that's right. Was that in the first season?
That might have been the second. See, now you're asking me facts and stuff.
Sorry. Yeah. Anyway, it's okay. I like Anson Mount. I love the fact that he did Pike, and I thought he did a really great job in the show. And
Yeah.
Rebecca Romijn's awesome, and the guy who played Spock, I think, was really good too. So this is actually a show that I'm almost looking forward to more, if you can believe that, than to Discovery coming back. Although Discovery, it's totally grown on me.
Oh yeah.
But this I'm really looking forward to because I like this whole era of Star Trek, Captain Pike. So I wonder if down the road they'll do like a reenactment of, like, when he goes to the planet to rescue the survivors of the crash, and then of the menagerie, and then it turns out to be
I would imagine, like, whenever the show ends, that'll be
the finale.
yeah. So
Maybe.
that'll be a nice little.
Well, here's another thing. There's also a character in this show. Christina Chong is playing a character called Lana Noonien Singh.
Yeah, I know.
Which is
It's
Khan's relative of some kind.
Maybe.
So I would imagine that this has some kind of time travel stuff.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I mean, because Khan doesn't show up until the original series in like the second season, or third season. So
this is like Khan's ancestor on
yeah.
Enterprise?
I mean, or maybe they're, I don't know. I mean, Singh is a semi-common
Noonien Singh. That's exactly.
Noonien Singh
That's Noonien. Yeah. So that's pretty on the nose if it's not going to be something, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and they also another character they introduced that I'm interested in is Hemmer, who's an Anar, which is basically an albino subspecies of the Andorians. And here's kind of the cool thing: the character and the species that he's from are depicted as genetically blind. Mm-hmm. And so Bruce Horrick, the actor who is playing him, is actually blind in real life. So I thought that was really interesting casting, and it'll lend a lot of authenticity to the role too.
Well, so don't you kind of? I mean, I would imagine. I'm not saying their intentions weren't in the right place, and they weren't going to do this all along. But I feel like that's something that people would make a comment about now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why did you cast a sighted person in a blind role when they're clearly supposed to be a blind?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm saying that they should do that kind of thing. There should be more representation for people like that. I mean, why wouldn't you cast if you can do the job? What does it matter? I mean, it's supposed to be a blind character, then have him be a blind character. But, but yeah, you feel like I'm going to just say that was their intention all along. So,
yeah, and you would certainly hope so, and it makes a lot of sense and everything. So. I was already really excited about Strange New Worlds, and even more so now. And here's the thing that I thought was really cool, because they did a video with everybody announcing their characters. And the thing I got from it, and I understand people are going to say, oh, well, they're actors, but everybody, especially the newly announced folks, and most especially Gooding playing Uhura, they all seem really excited about their characters and to be able to say who they were playing finally. So that seeing that enthusiasm in the cast is really cool. So
yeah, definitely. Yes, I'm looking forward to this show.
Yeah.
Do you have I was just thinking about the original series because I've been watching it a little bit because I watch old stuff.
Sure.
And of course I watched all the Matrix movies again recently just because I know this movie's coming out, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But do you have a favorite original series episode?
I don't have one favorite. There's a lot of them I like. Yeah. Here's the thing, though. Much like other beloved things from years past, there are... So, like, mentioning Khan, Space Seed, the episode that he debuts in, there were parts of that were really difficult to watch because there's some high level of sexism in that episode. And kind of prevalent throughout the original series. I mean, it was made in the 60s, and there were a lot of things that Star Trek did in the original series that promoted feminism and paved the way for women in NASA and things like that, thanks to Uhura, and stuff like that. But it was it's sometimes difficult to watch, but not always. I mean, I would say of most of the shows from that era, Star Trek is the most progressive, or one of the most progressive. Um, but there are a lot of really good episodes, and there were a lot of fantastic writers that wrote for that show.
Yeah,
So it's
like
hard for me to pick
yeah, I think Star Trek was
one.
one of the first shows that used like prolific and professional like sci-fi writers who'd written like novels and things like Theodore
Yeah,
Sturgeon and people like that who just write episodes of the show. Um, I mean, I think if I had to pick an episode that's my favorite, I mean, it definitely would Balance of Terror. Now that I know what it's called, apparently that's my favorite because I can't remember it.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, I like Space Seed, but I think probably City on the Edge of Forever is still my favorite
yeah,
episode, only
yeah.
because it just works so well, and it's so it's so Star Trek because Joan Collins' character stops everything so the Nazis win World War II and the Enterprise doesn't exist. It's like the stakes are so high.
It,
It's pretty amazing, but
it's
it's a well done episode for sure.
yeah. If I was pressed and someone said I had to pick, I'd pick that too. Here's the funny thing: most shows, especially any show that's been around for a number of years, that I'm a huge fan of, my favorite episodes tend to be the ones that kind of break the mold of the premise. Like City on the Edge Forever, very little of it takes place on the Enterprise, and it mainly focuses on Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, right?
Yeah,
Um, Whereas a lot of the rest of the episodes are, sort of ensemble pieces, take place on the ship, involves, Starfleet and stuff like that. And this is just a morality play that is mainly takes place in the 1920s, which is weird.
it's basically a version of the trolley problem, right?
Right, right, exactly. So there's a lot of other shows too where my favorite episodes are like, oh, this is my favorite one, and it's like totally breaks the premise or purposely does something different. So I don't know what that says about the shows that I like, but
Well, yeah, it's interesting too because if you think about it, Kirk has gone through a lot in the first series. I mean, he goes to
yeah,
that planet where his brother and his brother's wife and his brother's son like all die basically,
right,
or at least his nephew's still alive, but his brother gets killed, and
yeah,
then and then his brother's wife gets killed, and then he has to watch Edith Keeler get killed,
right,
and it's like he's gone through some shit. So by the time we meet Kirk in like Star Trek 1 and 2, the movies, I mean that 5-year mission took a toll on him. So
yeah,
I love the fact that in Space Seed, for example, it's such a Kirk thing because Khan is so much smarter and stronger than him, yet he wins anyway. You
right,
know, because
exactly.
he doesn't believe in the no-win scenario. He beats the odds, the long odds. He always wins. So that's the thing that's always amazing about Kirk, like we talked about last week, is that he will always find a way to pull it off,
Yes.
even if it's not possible. So
Well, and
anyway,
here's the thing: even though it later comes back to bite him, he doesn't like, well, I'm just going to go in and kill Khan. They exile him, right? Instead of,
right.
so people are like, oh, Kirk is like shoot first, ask questions later. I'm like, that's not entirely true. He does what he needs to win, but he still has, compassion and morality there. He's not just, shooting from the hip at all times and damn the consequences. So I thought it was good, and it does come back to bite him. And I think that's why, boy, we're really getting to Star Trek now, but I think that's why the scene in Star Trek 3 where his son gets killed and Kirk just kind of literally falls to the floor defeated. It's like that's for anyone who's been watching Star Trek and has watched the original series and all that. That's like a huge moment because it's like, what do you mean you're just like giving up? Hold on, that's not Kirk, right?
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
was such a personal loss that he's just, and you can kind of see maybe that's where everything else kind of you know fell on him at that moment. And it was just like, wow,
Well, yeah, I mean, he gave up a lot to be in Starfleet. He gave up a lot to be a
yeah,
captain,
yeah,
and I mean, basically, and now he's getting old, and he's talking about what could have been, and
yeah,
he should have maybe he's having regrets. He's like, oh, I should have stayed with Carol, and I should have had raised Peter or David. I'm
yeah,
sorry, not Peter.
David, yeah,
And I should have done all that. The regret, 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 and then this guy was trying to kill me from back in the day because I showed him mercy.
yeah,
And yeah, that's a huge character moment, which I'm sure, was one of the reasons that Shatner was interested in doing it because it's like, how do these
yeah.
characters change over time? And Kirk has been through a lot. They all have, I mean, they've all lost people. And so,
People talk about, oh, trying to bring realism to it. It's like characters wouldn't act this way and blah blah blah. And I'm like, you realize after like the first season of any of the Star Trek shows, most of the main characters would have been like drummed out of Starfleet because of the psychological and physical things they've gone through to be like, yeah, you can't really be captain anymore because your head's been fucked with too much, right? So
right, they try to do a little. They try to do a little bit of that in the Kelvin universe. I mean, they tried to.
Yeah.
They tried to sort of bench Kirk a little bit, but you know. And then, of course, the excuse is, well, we're the only ship in the sector or something, so I guess we got to go. All we have is a bunch of trainees. You know, we got to go check out this anomaly. So
they did deal with that in Next Generation, surprisingly, with when after Picard was deborgified, the very next episode, he basically goes home to France, and had him deal with that whole thing. But honestly, I mean, again, if you're going to bring realism to it, he would have been removed from captain of a starship immediately.
Well, you have to think though that these people, if the selection process to be in Starfleet is probably pretty hard to get in. First of all, and then it's like becoming a SEAL or something. You know, you got to go through a lot of mental and physical sort of rigors. They don't just let anyone be in Starfleet, and they certainly don't let just anyone be the captain of a starship. So Picard is a very unique person. There's that episode in the original series too, where they had to fight the Roman gladiator stuff. And the Roman guy says, you captained a ship. I don't see any different evidence of superiority. He's like, no, that's a starship captain, dude. That guy is way different. The crew is way different than my piddly ass crew.
Right.
These guys are very special, very unique. They're the elite, and so they're the only ones that could deal with it. But, they all deal with baggage. They all deal with shit. But I mean, you can't get into it too much. In a 1 hour show, but they do apparently, it seems like they're going to get into it with Picard because there's more Borg stuff that comes back because Q is basically like, the trial continues, dude. The human race is always on trial, motherfucker. So
and there's a new Borg queen in.
Is it a new queen or is it the same one?
No, it's a different actress.
Oh, because she got burned. That's right.
Yeah. So it's like Borg queen, time travel shenanigans, Q, kind of like this is all the really cool stuff that is part of favorite episodes, like all in one season. I'm really excited for it. So.
Yeah, I'm glad to see Jerry Ryan coming back too. That's cool.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. Well, especially since they kind of established a little bit of a relationship with her and Raffi at the end of the first season. It would have been lame if it's like, well, she's off on another adventure again. It would be like, well, okay.
Yeah, they're all pretty much back. I thought the Vulcan guy got left behind. Not Vulcan, but the one guy. I can't remember the character's name who was like defending them when they were escaping from the cube. I thought he got left on the cube and was like getting in a fight. I thought I saw him on the trailer too.
He was in the finale. He was with them on the Android.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The Romulan guy, I think, is not coming back. That they let live, but he's not in the second season. But all the main characters, and even like Jerry Ryan and stuff, are all back.
Cool
this season. So
that little segue or that little side note to Star Trek wasn't going to be a side note, you knew that. Should we go to What If Zombies, or you want to talk about the Matrix?
Well, let's go ahead and talk about Matrix, then we can go into What If. So
right, because What If could what if we didn't talk about What If?
What if?
No, I mean, okay, so let me be the first to say that I wasn't sitting around my house thinking about, gosh, I hope they make a new Matrix movie. Because to me, the trilogy was the trilogy and it was done. And I didn't, and even the Wachowskis had said, nah, we're not going to do any more Matrix shit. We're going to go on. Let the video game people continue the story. We're going to make other things. And we're going to even split up and do things on our own, which is what happened. So Lana's just doing this one. But man, it looks pretty fucking good. I don't know.
I will say this. Yeah, I wasn't, because you're right. I mean, it was a trilogy, and it was, I thought, a fairly definitive ending.
But still open ended. Like, you think we'll see Neo again? Yeah, I think we will. Okay, so there you go. That's like, I made this sunrise for him. Oh, how sweet.
Nobody does that for me, damn it.
But it makes a sunrise for you. And of course, the Matrix is now not green anymore, right? The whole green tint is gone. Now it's the color of love or whatever. So,
I was going, we don't need to see anymore. And when there was rumblings and stuff, I was like, I don't know, that might be interesting. And then when they finally announced that they were going to do it, I was like, well, I'll definitely keep up with it, and I'm sure I'll probably watch it. But yeah, like you said, I wasn't like, oh boy. But Man, that was a hell of a trailer. I'm like, okay, I'm in now for sure.
Well, yeah,
So
I mean, there's a lot of obviously Easter eggs and stuff from the first movies,
yeah,
but the way they're kind of updating it. So, if I'm gathering, and this could be spoilers if you don't want to hear about it, but from what I gather from the trailer, this is now the seventh version of the Matrix, right? Because in the original trilogy, they're like, oh, this is the sixth time. You're the
right,
sixth. So this is the seventh day Genesis, whatever you want to talk about,
sure.
religious overtones of the whole story. But so now it seems like Neo, I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson is in the Matrix again, but now being kept in check by Neil Patrick Harris's character who gives him the blue pills.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and then apparently it turns out, because as if I remember correctly from the original movies, the difference in the sixth version is that Neo and Trinity fell in love, right? So
right.
that power is what allowed them to break the Matrix and establish the truce with the machines. And so it makes sense that somehow one, like, I get in the impression, and maybe I'm wrong, that there's like a battle going on between machine groups or something. And so some faction of the machines brings Neo and Trinity back into the Matrix together
Right.
to try to do stuff, because there's a lot of shots in the trailer where like when he's holding back all the bullets in that lobby, she's holding his arm.
Yes.
So like together they have, like when they're clasping hands, they have that power that comes out of their hands and stuff. So maybe together now they have to defeat the seventh version of the Matrix or do something. But there's a lot of cool stuff in there. There's like, lots of good callbacks. Just like a Hemwick looks amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm totally looking forward to that. And the guy who's playing young Matrix, young Matrix, that doesn't make sense. Young Morpheus is what I meant to say.
Yes. Yes.
He's confirmed he's playing young Morpheus. So
He has. He said that, and I'm sure there'll be some explanation in the movie as to why they didn't bring back Lawrence Fishburne. Although, in their defense, I think Fishburne's pretty busy, and maybe the schedules weren't going to line up. So,
well, that also it doesn't have to be. Yeah, I think it's a misdirect, because there's also that shot in the hallway where they're fighting, and it looks like that same person is dressed like an agent.
that's true.
So I'm wondering if the sort of opposing machine intelligence faction is trying to confuse Neo by bringing back Morpheus, hoping they'll recognize him or something. I don't know. I'm sure it's a trick. Maybe it's not, but you can't tell a lot from a trailer. But my most favorite part of the trailer was when Neo redirects the missile from the thing and blows it into a
Yeah.
helicopter. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell? That is pretty cool.
Yes.
So there's a lot of nostalgia, obviously, for the first movies, and there's a lot of amazing stuff in this trailer. Which,
Well, there's other people that are announced that we didn't see in the trailer. Christina Ricci's in this movie.
yeah,
And there's a couple returning characters that we didn't see. Jada Pinkett Smith is returning as Niobe.
yes,
Lambert Wilson as a Maravonian. I can never pronounce it correctly.
Merovingian.
Yes. He's back. So, and then another actor I like, Brian J. Smith, is in this. So I'm excited. I would say the trailer did exactly what a trailer should do. It
Yeah.
intrigued me and made me go, "Yeah, I want to see this." That was a well done trailer.
Yeah, I love the beginning when they're coming, they're flying in on that building, and
Yeah.
you hear that kind of squeal noise, like, oh, okay, and then the first thing we see is Neo, but then we see a black cat.
Yeah, it's like
Don't trust anything
yes,
that you see in this trailer or in this movie. And then, of course, Neil Patrick Harris's glasses are blue, and there's like a blue statue in the background, and there's like he's wearing a
Yeah.
blue sweater, and he's like, "Oh no, we don't use that word in here."
yes.
I think you do say the Merovingian, by the way. I think that's him snapping his fingers in the trailer,
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would make sense. All
because
right.
that's not Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson's wearing a leather jacket or whatever, and he doesn't have beautiful cufflinks, and he doesn't have
That's
I think
true.
that's the Merovingian. So
Okay.
so you do see him maybe, but what's interesting too is it looks like the Matrix sort of trilogy in this movie has become kind of meta, because there's definitely a couple of scenes or a couple of shots in the trailer where scenes from the original trilogy are playing on a screen,
Yeah.
and then I think that scene at the end when he's talking to the guy Jonathan Groff, I think it is his character, and like he's his agent or whatever, is like, oh, to go back to the Matrix. So I'm wondering if they're using this whole thing to try to confuse Mr. Anderson into thinking that the Matrix was just something he made up, some IP that he created, because he's a programmer, right? So maybe he created a video game called the
Ah.
Matrix to fool him into thinking none of that really happened.
Well, that's funny you should mention that because the official synopsis that was released doesn't really say anything specific about the plot, but it does go out of its way at various points, and it's only 3 paragraphs, to say that this story follows on from the first film, and they keep mentioning the first film and don't really mention the other two. So I wonder if it turns out that like after the first film, something wacky hijinks ensued, and there was like I don't know, something where really the second and third movies were just like Matrix projections or something. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know
there's
that they would go out of their
yeah,
way to retcon them or something, but
no.
it's kind of intriguing that maybe they make the whole thing is like, yeah, that was great, that thing you came up with, but now here's a real Matrix and here's what's really going on. That would be
Well,
kind of interesting.
there's always been that theory about why Neo has powers in the real world, quote unquote, because they're all in the second layer of the Matrix.
Right, right. So
Because
maybe that's,
the machines just said we're going to allow the people that want to escape to quote unquote escape and to think they're in the real world, but they're still in another layer of the Matrix. So that's why
yeah.
Neo still has his powers. But and I mean that's one theory. But my theory has always been that he just has a connection to the powers of the machine world, and he can just tap those into. He's like got a
Yeah.
wireless connection, basically, right?
Yeah, yes.
And so he can just still do that. But it is interesting to think that. That could also just be a misdirect too. But by the way, the idea that what better way to subjugate the populace by giving them better technology to basically plug into their machines of their own free will.
Yeah.
Look at your phone all day. You know, do
Yeah,
this,
well,
do that. It's like it's so
there's that
smart.
scene where he's on the elevator and everyone's looking at their phones and he's
He's
looking
not.
around at
Yeah,
them. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like, oh wow.
yeah.
Um,
It's really true. It's very true. It's like, and Cipher said, "It's like why wouldn't I want that? Ignorance is bliss, my friend." Right?
yeah.
In the
So
first movie.
yeah, so I'm definitely intrigued. It raises a lot of questions that I can't wait
Yeah.
to see what happens. I think you may be onto something because they mentioned in even in the first Matrix, Agent Smith talks about the first iteration of the Matrix was a utopia and it
Right.
failed because people couldn't buy into it. And so, it's like
It was too
maybe
perfect. They kept trying to wake up.
yeah. So, maybe parts of that play into this too, but it's just going to be fantastic to watch. So yeah, it comes out at Christmas, both in the theaters and on HBO Max. So
It comes out on my birthday, December 22nd.
nice,
What a
nice.
nice birthday present. Uh, yeah, there's a lot to unpack in the trailer. There's a lot of images. There's a lot of things which we probably don't want to have to get into right now. But there's a shit ton of stuff
And
that
they
obviously.
finally play. My wife pointed out, well, it's about time that they associated the song "White Rabbit" with the Matrix. I mean,
Well,
hello.
it's very on the nose. The red pill, what blue.
Yes, one pill makes you smaller, one pill makes you larger.
It's
Yeah.
it's interesting though, if in the trailer too, because like I said, Neil Patrick Harris's character is the probably a machine construct, and he's like got a lot of blue stuff. And then when Neo goes to the noodle place, he sees Priyanka Chopra's character wearing the
Yes.
red glasses and actually reading Alice in Wonderland. So it's like
Yeah.
maybe she's the new Oracle. I don't know. The people have been speculating, and I kind of agree that that's Sati from the first movie, grown up.
That's what I've seen too, and I would agree. Actually, Melanie said that she was like, "Oh, so the little
Well, because
girl."
she becomes the new Oracle because she's basically
Right.
with the Oracle all the time. She's the last character that's with the Oracle at the end,
Yeah.
and so she's like the good side maybe, and so the question is, the Trinity comes back, and I think that there's a reason that Morpheus isn't here, like older Morpheus, because I'm sure that Jada Pinkett Smith's character will explain. I mean, he could be dead.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you're right though. I feel like Keanu would have tried to get him in it if there was a way to do it. And so either it was scheduling or it didn't make sense because Agent Smith, Hugo Weaving's not coming back either.
Right. Well, and I mean, Lawrence Fishburne's doing the John Wick movies with
Right.
Keanu Reeves, so it would seem like, I mean, Fishburne keeps saying, "Well, I wasn't asked to participate," but it just seems like, I don't know, Reeves would have said, "Hey, why isn't he back?" And they were like, "Well, here's why. There's a story reason." It's like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Well,
I
either that or he is back and he's just not saying anything.
Yeah. Do you think? So, do you think this is just going to be a one and done movie, or do you think this sets up another potential trilogy or continuation?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, it's really
I hope they just do a really good movie. Is what I'm.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting,
I hope that they do a really good movie and it's enjoyable. And sure, leave it open for sequels. But I mean, how long does Keanu Reeves want to keep doing movies? I don't know. He seems to be trying to cram a lot of things in.
Here's my question about Keanu Reeves. Do you think because the John Wick series is continuing that he's contractually obligated to not shave or cut his hair? Because he looks like John Wick in this.
I feel like that's his look. He just wants to be that person, and that's maybe how he starts the movie. But like in the original Matrix movie, you can tell when they shot stuff because obviously he's shaved head when he gets. Although there's a couple of scenes on Nebuchadnezzar when he's wearing a hat, which you can tell is covering his hair.
Right.
Whether that was a pickup or a reshoot or whatever, but yeah, I mean they had to do that. So I'm sure there'll be parts of this where he's got different hair, or. Yeah, I mean, maybe he was doing this and John Wick back to back, or he'd go to Matrix in the morning and John Wick or whatever. I
just thought it was funny that he was like, "Oh, he's John Wick."
Well, that's what I'm saying. So if you can make the case that the Matrix movies are meta or sort of like canon in this movie as like fake games or whatever, you can make the case that he also invented the John Wick franchise as a meta gaming franchise too.
There's got to be a line where it's like, we attempted to bring you back a few times before. One as this, one as a hired murderer, something, a revenge-seeking guy or something. So,
well, if you think about it, if the idea is the machines have to keep him in check somehow because he'll destroy their delicate world. So you could say that in one, he could have been. John Wick could just be another iteration of Neo in the Matrix that doesn't work. I mean, you could say that about everything. Any Keanu Reeves character could exist in this world, right?
Yes. I do like.
One time you were an FBI agent who learned to surf. One time you were a spy. One time you were a courier.
You were a hacker.
You were a hacker. Yeah.
So I think, although I'll say maybe the most iconic scene in the whole trailer is Thomas Anderson in a bubble bath with a rubber ducky on top of his head. I thought that was pretty great.
Well, he is a programmer, right? The rubber ducky thing for debugging code. That was a whole thing. Yeah. So
exactly.
That might be too inside baseball for some people, but it's a real thing. Or you can look it up. It's online. I'm sure you can find rubber ducky for debugging code. So
exactly. So
it is funny. It is funny. But they go to a lot of trouble to do that kind of thing in this movie. Like if you look at and this isn't my observation because I didn't stop the video every frame, but like the pill bottles that he's using, they're like the name of the drug is something that's associated with like metaphysics and different versions of the self and all this kind of stuff. I mean, they did a lot. They do a lot of deep dive. I think you have to now because they know people are going to analyze this shit. And
I don't think anything is done as a throwaway or just for fun. It all means something or it's a specific reason. So
because it could have just said pills or it could have just said drugs. It could have been generic. And if it wasn't 4K HD, whatever, where you can zoom in and enhance, then they wouldn't necessarily care as much. But now with the internet, and also honestly, it's nice because it gives people something to talk about.
And it's just good to know that there's that attention to detail, and they're thinking about those things. It isn't just, hey, let's make another Matrix movie and make some money.
Because people would see it, I think, no matter what.
But
I also feel like Keanu Reeves has a lot more input into things now than he probably did back then. And I don't think he would have done it because he doesn't need the money or anything. There had to be a compelling reason. It has to be fun, or it has to be like, oh, let's get back together and do this. There has to be a reason that he wants to do it. And I think that it's going to be good because he's going to be enthusiastic about it, and he's going to do a great job. And there will be some cool stuff, and there'll be action, there'll be whatever. But I think the bulk of the sort of superhuman fighting action is probably going to be more left to Jessica Henwick and to the other characters because they're frankly younger and can bounce off walls a lot easier. Because it looks like, at least in this trailer, there's a lot of stuff where they're fighting and doing the martial arts and everything, whereas Keanu's character is not really doing as much of that. Although he doesn't do it as much in The Matrix either. No, I mean, in John Wick, it's more a lot of shooting and then occasionally some jujitsu or whatever to throw a guy on the ground, but shooting somebody in the face like 6 times, and never running out of ammo, which is why he has to use the guns with lots and lots of ammo.
Of course. I'm going to predict right now, though, the final shot in the movie, or possibly like a mid credits or end credits scene, is going to be like wherever whatever agent is defeated, a hand's going to reach down and pick up the sunglasses and put it on in an extreme close up, and it's going to be obvious to those that know that it's Hugo Weaving and that Agent Smith is back. That's what I'm going to predict right now.
That or Neo flies.
Well, he's going to fly in the movie, I'm sure, at some point. So.
They don't show it. Even Morpheus says it, holds him the pill and says, "Time to fly."
Well, it does show him leaping off of buildings, though.
But he's holding Trinity in his hand too.
That's
so
true.
I think he'll fly at the end, which is what he did at the end of the Matrix. Remember, he's just like
that's true.
took off.
Yeah.
So, but that's interesting if they're somehow retconning or sort of getting around movie 2 and 3. But then how do they explain? Because at the end of the third movie, there's peace with the machine, peace with the machines and the humans, and so there's actually a scene in the trailer where they're pulling him out of the water, and he's got his burned eyes, and he looks so. I don't know. I guess you can't really believe everything you see in the trailer. So
yeah,
that's a scene from the video game that he created. So there you go. Yeah. The second two movies are actually part of the video game that Mr. Anderson created for the software company.
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll explain it to us. So.
Yeah, I feel confident. I mean, you can say, I'll admit that I didn't necessarily love the second movies when I saw them the first time, but over the years, my opinion of them has changed, and now I sort of take them as a whole with the first one. So the first one was so amazing and so innovative at the time. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Bullet time,
right,
pretty fucking cool. Now it's laughable how they have to do it, how they did it then. It's like, wow, that was
like that was a lot of work.
That was a lot of work for that shot, but it was so fucking cool. But now they could do anything.
Well, I think that's kind of the trap of a movie like The Matrix. Is it was innovative and different, so everybody expects any sequels are going to be equally as astounding as the first one. And it's like, well, that wasn't the point of them, though. It was to continue the story. It's like, we've shown you this fantastic world and we'll show you more of it, but it's not going to be leaps and bounds amazing like the first one. So that's kind of the trap of those. And it's happened with other movies that, like, the first movie was like, oh my God, that's just amazing. And people want that from any continuation of the story, but I don't think that's the point of the continuation of the story. It's like the first one is, here, we've established this world. Now we're going to explore it a little bit more and also tell more of our story and conclude our story. And so I think that was part of, in my opinion, that was part of the disappointment of the sequels for The Matrix. I liked them. I would totally admit at the time, I thought the third one was the weakest, but I still liked it. And my appreciation of them, like you said, has grown over the years. And looking at them as a whole, as one story, it's even better. So,
well, there's a lot more. There's a lot more like sappy moments in the third one, especially. But I think the other thing that I reacted to is I felt like The Matrix, the first movie, was a complete movie. Neo stops the bullets of the agents,
right,
and he flies at the end. So obviously he's super powered and he's a threat. That could have been the end of the thing right there.
Oh, sure.
And it was. And I kind of felt like, yes, that's a complete story. You don't have to make any more. But then it's like, oh, now there's going to be 2 more movies. That's kind of a money grab a little bit. And people can say whatever they want, like we always envisioned as a trilogy, whatever. Right. But I don't get the feeling that necessarily it was supposed to be, because who knew if this was going to make money or not, right?
Right.
And so the fact that it did make a lot of money, and it turned out so well, and people responded to it like they did. 2 more movies seem like, oh, now it's just like for the cash. That was maybe me as a younger cynical person, because again, I feel like The Matrix by itself is a self-contained story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Neo evolves. I mean, Thomas Anderson evolves into Neo and becomes
the one.
Yeah, and that's all you need. That's the end. And he defeats the idea is that it doesn't matter what he does next, because he's there. He can stop the bullets. He can affect the Matrix with his mind, and he can do whatever he wants. I don't know if it needed 2 more movies to basically kind of tell the same story.
Right. I can see that. That's fair.
That was my criticism, I think, back then. And in some ways the fights kind of got repetitive, as much as I hate to say that, in the second and third movie especially. It's just like, yeah, we've seen this kind of thing before, But then going back and watching them this last week or so, it didn't bother me as much. Maybe because I was in the comfort of my own screening room at home and whatever. And I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna watch this one at home. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna go to the theater. I wish I would, but I'm not going to. So
I think with the sequels, yeah, I agree. I think they came up with the story of how they were going to end it when they decided to do 2 more movies, and I think the sequels relied too much on let's show what more cool things we can do with the technology. You want bullet time? How about ultra bullet time and stuff like that? And
we'll give you a bullet time up the ass. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think that wasn't what made the first movie special. It was that, especially for me, I just went in not knowing anything about it, and just the twists and the reveals and all that and what was going on made it special. And once you've revealed all that, oh look, it's a computer thing and blah blah blah, and you can't recapture that, I don't think, unless you're telling a different story. You can't recapture that in any sequels, and I think that's what people expected and wanted, because it was so revelatory in the first one, and that wasn't going to be possible. And then at the same time, I think you're right. They were like, oh, let's up the ante on the technology and get some really weird shit going on. And I think that was probably the wrong thing to do. So,
right.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's crazy. It's crazy to think that the first movie only cost $60 million, and that's not even a lot really now, especially.
Right.
But what kind of movie would it have been if Will Smith had said yes and decided to do this instead of doing Wild Wild West? Because it was supposed to be Will Smith as Neo and Val Kilmer as Morpheus.
Right. That would have been a totally different movie.
I wonder if I like Will Smith and Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
It probably would have been similar, but it's hard to see it as anything but Keanu Reeves at this point, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of the first movie, and I like the second two less, but I did enjoy Monica Bellucci, so I will watch the. she's extraordinary.
Yes.
But yeah, this looks great. I'm in, and again, I'm probably more excited because I could just turn it on and watch it here too.
Exactly. Yeah. Again,
I don't have to go. I don't have to go anywhere to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
anyway. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's cool, I mean, I guess we could talk about The Matrix forever, but I like the fact that it also had a lot of impact on the way they shoot fights, like all the wire work and everything.
Yes.
It's funny because there's a scene in the original movie where you can, like, where Neo is reaching for a doorknob and you see Morpheus reflected in the doorknob at him, but you can also see the camera.
Yes.
Because they're like trying to cover it with Morpheus's coat, but you could definitely see it. But in the new movie, in the elevator scene where it's above him in the mirror, obviously they can remove the camera
right,
now. But
right.
it's gonna be amazing to see what they do with having basically anything at their disposal now. You can do anything.
Yeah, I think
in a movie. So
I think my only not regret, but my only thing about the amazing fight scenes is that for a long time, even till today, up until today, those are replicated and emulated in a lot of movies. But it's like, so you're taking and this is like the idiot, cynical part of me. I'm like, so you're taking like this extraordinary fight scene that is off the hook, that is done in an artificial construct, and then you're applying that to what you want to be like a real life, realistic movie. It's like, no, it doesn't kind of work that way. But so there were times where I'm like, oh, so they're copying The Matrix, but this is supposed to be like a street gang fighting in New York. It's like, no, that's not how physics work. And I know I'm a big proponent of going, well, it's a fictional world anyway, so who cares about physics? But there's ignoring physics for the betterment of a story, and then there's like going too far. It's like, well, okay. So that may be the only thing that is not positive in the legacy of The Matrix. But I think much like James Cameron movies and George Lucas movies and even Spielberg movies to a certain extent, the Wachowskis have done a lot to push filmmakers into thinking things differently and pushing the technology of making films. So that's always a good thing.
It is. As long as it's in service to the story and doesn't become the story.
Yeah.
So, but that's one thing that was good about The Matrix, is there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of technology, but it took a backseat to the characters and to the philosophy of what was going on, like the sense of self, what does it mean to be, whatever.
Yes.
And it asked a lot of questions that people would necessarily. I mean, if you think about it, it probably was a pretty big gamble for a studio to make a movie like this with complicated action and like all these deep philosophical ideas.
Yeah.
And and really unproven directors. And Keanu Reeves was a big star at this point, I think, but like 1998 or whatever was not is not the time for studios to take risks. So I'm sure that's one reason they shot it in Australia, because it was cheaper. Sure. and all that stuff. And it's just, obviously it paid off, but I'm pretty sure it was Warner Brothers who was interested in making another Matrix film or rebooting the franchise.
Sure.
And so, and originally I think it was supposed to be Michael B. Jordan playing Neo, if I remember correctly, when they were first talking about it.
Yeah, it seemed like it was going to be more of a
reboot,
reimagining or a reboot than a continuation. So,
but then of course it evolved into. I think Zach Penn had something to do with it for a while too, if I remember. But that was like years ago.
Yeah.
But obviously it turned out differently because Lana Wachowski came back and so did Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss. Well, Carrie-Anne Moss, by the way, looks fantastic.
She does. She's awesome. She's always been great and looked great. She's one of those that doesn't really age.
I loved her in the original Matrix. I was like, wow, she's really beautiful.
The other risk too with the original Matrix is, I mean, they do a lot of explaining in the movie, but there was a huge risk of the audience sitting there going, "What?
What?
I don't get it. What's going on? Where are they now?"
Well, I kind of feel like the whole scene with the architect was them. Here's for the dumb people.
Yes, exactly.
This is the scene that explains what you've been watching for 2 movies now.
Right, exactly.
Which is funny when you see the original Matrix. Like there's this scene when Mr. Anderson gets taken from the software company by the agents. In the next shot, there's like a bunch of monitors where they're watching him in the interrogation room. Right. And that's the architect's room, it turns out.
Yeah, exactly. Which
of course nobody knew that at the time, but
right. So
how are you going to make a phone call when you're unable to speak?
Mr. Anderson.
He was so good in that, man. Fucking Hugo Weaving kicked ass.
That's why I totally expected in, Lord of the Rings, Mr. Baggins. But...
Mr. Baggins.
Yes. Exactly. So
good old Hugo Weaving. Man, that guy, I don't know. I feel like he's been sort of underappreciated in a lot of ways. I'm sad that he couldn't come back for this movie. But then again, it makes sense because it's not about Agent Smith. Agent Smith was like the opposite anomaly, right? I mean, he was trying to take over too. And so the deal that Neo supposedly struck with the machines is that you sacrifice yourself for the humans and get rid of Smith, right? And so that's what happens. That's why the machines form a truce with the humans at the end, supposedly.
Right.
So anyway, but
Hugo Weaving is great. He's done. He's some stuff that is just fantastic. Anyway,
I was wondering why he didn't come back as Red Skull again.
I know.
Maybe the makeup was just too much of a pain. I mean, I can understand. I can see that.
Maybe
he just doesn't like makeup. I don't know, but or he's busy. I mean, I think if they had asked him to be in this movie, that's what I heard, and then he was busy with something else and he couldn't work out scheduling wise. Yeah. So maybe that was it, and they actually wanted him to come back. But maybe you're right. Maybe the last shot will be someone picking up the sunglasses, like, "What were you expecting?" And that's the end, right?
Yeah, that's why I think they're going to tease his return if they intend to continue it, and they probably will. Or at least leave it open-ended. So
a mid-credit sequence with him just picking up the glasses and left in the rain or whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, and what better way? Because everyone knows that people try to find stuff out. What better way to hide it by saying, "Oh, I wasn't asked." Like
yes,
Lawrence Fishburne. "Oh, no one asked me to come back." It's like, I can't believe that. First of all, and it didn't work out with my schedule. Oh, bummer. But then you gotta have some surprises or not. But you know what? But like you said. What I care about is if it's an enjoyable film for itself. It doesn't have to connect to anything else. It doesn't have to necessarily explain everything or be, an amazing 4th installment in the Matrix franchise. It just needs to be a cool film and that I like. So
exactly. So that's what I'm hoping for. So we'll see. All
right. So switching gears for a second. Well, I mean, not for a second, but switching gears for a few minutes to what?
Speaking of zombies.
Yeah. I mean, we weren't really speaking of zombies, but yeah. I'm conflicted about this episode of What If. I liked it in some respects, but I kind of felt like some of the jokes didn't really work. But also, it's like they glossed over a lot of areas. I wonder if there's going to be a part 2 of this too, because it was like there's a lot of stuff that happens that doesn't really pay off, and also there's no real ending. It kind of just stops. I feel like, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I feel like this one more than any of the others really kind of dropped us in the middle of a story without giving us like a preamble or any kind of ending. It was just kind of like, hey, here's we have a Marvel Zombies movie and we're gonna take 40 minutes out of it and make an episode. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I kind of like the fact that it wasn't a lot of exposition of explaining what happened. I mean, I had a pretty definitive reason why this all started, but it definitely left a lot of questions. And you're right, I felt like it just kind of stopped. And I've kind of felt that about not the previous one, but I think the Star-Lord one too, that there's going to be more, or at some point there's going to be, like I said, I just keep feeling like there's going to be like this team up episode or something like that.
Well, for one thing, the Watcher gets more and more prominent in every episode. Like, you can see him clearly now in this episode, and he's talking and whatever. But again, it was cool to get most of the voice actors back, although Tom Holland was not Spider-Man in this one.
No. But the guy who did him was pretty close. I mean,
pretty close.
Hudson Timms or whatever. Sounded pretty good. But.
Yeah, he did sound pretty good. He was close. He was close enough. But Chadwick Boseman was back. And
a lot of people in this one. It was pretty
Paul
impressive.
Bettany, but not obviously
Mark Ruffalo.
Obviously not Wanda, because she was a zombie at that point. Oh, spoilers! Sorry if you haven't watched it.
Oops.
And I like that. That was actually my favorite part of the whole episode, was that Vision sort of trying to figure out what to do, because his love for Wanda is universal in every multiverse, obviously.
Yeah.
So his desire to keep her alive, but also to protect everyone else from her by caging her.
Yes.
And then just feeding her and keeping her there was like his it's like Hal's solution in 2001. I got to kill the people to complete my mission. It's like Vision's like, I need to sacrifice other people to keep Wanda in check for the greater good, right?
I need to hack off pieces of
T'Challa
to feed to him. Although,
which tracks with the comics, because that's what happens to Black Panther in the comics. But yeah, I mean, that was a really interesting, poignant sort of story for Vision, I thought.
Yes.
Where he does this and then has to atone for it, and in the end kills himself, basically.
Yeah,
right.
He ends up dying the same way he died in Endgame, by removing the stone.
Right, but he does it himself. He does it himself. He kills himself.
Yeah.
and probably Wanda too, but probably not.
Yes, exactly. Although I think my favorite part of it is Kurt finally got to meet Baba Yaga. So
Baba Yaga.
I was like, oh, that's pretty great, because she's suspending him in the air and turning him around, and he's like, Baba Yaga. It was like,
it's actually and good for him. Good for David Jasmalian too. He got to he got to do another. Yeah, good for him. And he's wearing his attire from Ant-Man, and
and Paul Rudd was great as Scott Lang, even as a head in a jar. Spoilers.
Well, because apocalypses are funny. So
exactly.
And then, of course, the thing that didn't make much sense is they go to Wakanda, right? And then it turns out that Thanos already took over Wakanda. But why did he go to Wakanda if Vision wasn't there?
Right.
So that's an interesting question. Why did he bother? Because he went there to find the Mind Stone, but the Mind Stone wasn't there. So why didn't he come to Camp Lehigh? What was the point of that? Is he just stupid? But then when he holds up the gauntlet, that's the only stone he doesn't have, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, that didn't make sense.
So that was the part that you're right. I felt like there's got to be a part 2 to it, because
maybe there will be, and maybe there will be. Yeah.
Although I fully expected them to be like, because they were very happy about going to Wakanda, getting to Wakanda, and everyone's a zombie already. And it's like, well, fuck.
Well, you look at they're all inside the wall trying to get out, which I thought was an interesting visual.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess you could just make the case that Thanos is inevitable even in zombie form, right?
Right.
So in the other version where T'Challa is Star-Lord and he convinced Thanos to not destroy half the population, that's only delaying the inevitable.
Right. Right.
So Thanos is always, the snap is an absolute point in time. It happens in every multiverse, maybe, and
That could
so
be. Yeah.
it's always going to happen no matter what. The interesting thing too, because in the comics, the quantum realm doesn't necessarily have anything to do with
Right.
with the virus that kills or
I think
makes
it's
people
something
zombies.
from outer space or something like that.
It is, or I thought it was a. The way that they get it is interesting, but then Janet, doing all that, and then
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was sort of interesting, but you didn't see Kronos in there, and it was a different part of the quantum realm, which I thought was interesting, and there was like different things going on. So I'm wondering if she was somehow doing something. The theory that I saw was that it was somehow related to destroying Thanos, and so they were trying to infect Thanos somehow. But I don't know if that's true. Like the Eternals had something to do with it, maybe.
Oh, I see.
But
Okay.
I can't remember how the zombie thing started in the comics. I can't remember if it had anything to do with Thanos. I don't think he appears in the Marvel Zombies comics, though, if I remember correctly.
No, I don't think so. I know at one point the Marvel Zombies, because the zombies are actually able in the comics, they're actually able to reason and talk and stuff like that, and they eventually build a ship and go out and eat Galactus. They find Galactus, eat him, and basically ride his carcass back to Earth or something like that.
Well, I blame Robert Kirkman for all of this because he wrote the Marvel Zombies comics. So. Yeah. He's obsessed with the undead, man. That guy's a weirdo. No.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, yeah, in the comics, it's just they have an insatiable hunger, right? So they just eat.
Yeah, but they talk and communicate, and they still have their intelligence. And there's even, I think, some of them that are like remorseful, and they're like, I don't really want to do this, but I have no choice. So, so yeah, it's vastly different, I would say, in the comics. Here, they're just mindless zombies that, attack and eat. But I don't know. I enjoyed it, but yeah, it did feel very much to me like if you walked in the room while a movie was going, and it was like, oh yeah, there's this movie on, I'll watch this, and then at some point you get up and leave and only watch like the middle part of the movie. So it did feel disjointed. So
yeah, I mean, you do have context because of the other Marvel films you've already watched. Like at the beginning, Banner's coming from the ship where Thanos just killed Thor, or just killed Loki, right? So he comes to the Sanctum Sanctorum, but nobody's there because they've already been zombified.
Yeah.
But it's kind of that's what happens. So it makes sense that this takes place in the span of time that it takes Thanos to get to Wakanda. But
why did he go to Wakanda?
Well, he goes to meet Ebony Maw to get this Mind Stone or to get the Time Stone, but then Ebony Maw gets killed on Earth, and so he never gets the Time Stone, I guess, either. Or does
right?
So how does he get it? Because Strange has still got it, right?
Right, and Strange is zombified and not in, or who knows what happened to his cloak is there. We never see him, and so he theoretically never went to Titan, and so
So they never fought Thanos. He never gave Thanos the Time Stone.
Yeah.
And then Thanos, there's no reason for him to go to Wakanda. So yeah, there's a lot of, not a lot, but there's some question about why this happened, other than the fact that that's what happened in the movie. So
right. It
gives people some common reference. So you don't necessarily have to explain it. But yeah, I in terms of story, I like zombies. I think they're fun, but I think this is kind of the weakest sort of story plotted episode. There's definitely a lot of logic problems. I know logic problems in a comic book story with zombies is kind of a stupid thing to say, but it didn't. There's a lot of glossing over of things that didn't make sense. I think maybe this was a longer episode.
Maybe again we do get a sequel because they're already working on the second season. So maybe the second season has a follow up to some of these. I don't know.
Previously on Marvel Zombies.
Exactly.
We now return to Marvel Zombies already in progress.
Yes, exactly.
Most people won't even get that reference, but
that would be great. That would be.
That's funny. Back in the old days when you had to watch TV and the networks, and then they would preempt shows sometimes, and they'd their shows would go over, but the show was already playing like on a different time zone. It's like a whole thing. You can look it up, kids.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah. It was still, I still like it, and I still enjoyed it. It was funny, and I thought the Scott Lang stuff was funny, but I don't know. I think they just said, "Cool, we got zombies, let's do that," and that was all the thought that went into it. Maybe
I don't know. Yeah, it'll be.
or it's just a multiverse, so it doesn't matter. It's not a regular timeline. Who cares?
What if tonight's episode, the zombies.
Yeah, that's basically it. What if zombies did this and this? Well, that's it. This is what happens. You get.
Yeah.
What if this is what if this happens? And these are the parts of the story that you get, and that's all. So.
What if a Quinn Martin production? Sorry, you got me off on old tags
Quinn Martin production, yeah.
to TV series, but
Happy Days is filmed before a live studio audience.
Marvel Zombies is filmed before a live studio cattle-fed audience.
Or they were alive until this episode.
Yes. Marvel Zombies is filmed in front of a dead audience.
An undead audience.
An undead audience. Yes, exactly.
So yeah. It's not my favorite episode, but I still like the fact that they did it, and they went as violent with it as they could, I guess, in a Disney cartoon.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of shots where like Wong is eating an arm or something. It's like that's about as. But they kicked up that good dust cloud just in case to cover the real part, because zombies eat flesh. People.
I liked Banner's commentary during that. He's like, "Whoa, that's a little extreme. What's?" It's like, "Whoa!" But,
and he got to go back and redo some of his lines from the movie. And what do you mean? War. No,
yeah.
So
I don't know. It was enjoyable,
I think the other thing that I was bummed about is we didn't get to see what happened between Hulk and Wanda.
Yeah.
Who won?
Right, and Hulk is.
And what happened to Bucky?
We established pretty quickly they couldn't bite through Hulk's skin.
Right.
So is he still around, or did he eventually, because he gets stronger the more angry he gets, and not being able to beat the bad guy would make him even angrier, so he's
but then Thanos is able to subdue him, though.
Well, that's true. So I don't know, we'll see.
I don't know,
maybe we won't. I don't know, but
no, we probably won't. But you gotta think that was the only reason they did that. Well, one reason was that they had to set Banner on this course of Hulk and Banner having a conflict about who was in charge,
right?
But also to show just how tough Thanos is, right? He beat the Hulk, so
exactly.
So and then Thor, who should have gone for the head, as we know. So anyway,
that's right. Well, he eventually did. But
he eventually did. Yeah. Anybody else kill that guy? No, I didn't think so. All right.
Yeah.
I just want to see Thor back again. I'm so excited for Thor, the next Thor movie.
I want to see. I want to see a TV series that's just Bro Thor and Korg and Meek hanging out playing video games, eating pizza.
They could do a YouTube. They could do a YouTube channel where they're just playing video games. Yeah,
I think that would make a great sitcom. It'd be great. You could do like 20-minute episodes. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Korg and Meek and Thor. Thor.
Yeah.
And get yourself on the Wi-Fi. No password. So anyway. I would watch that. But so all right. So should we pick stuff, because we're going to bring picks back? So this is
we are. Let's bring back picks.
All right. What's your no, go ahead. You go.
Are you going to make me go, since it was my idea to bring it back, right?
Yes, it was your idea.
Okay. So I am picking a book this week. I just finished reading the latest Stephen King novel, Billy Summers. Fantastic book, and I'll tell, this is no spoiler, but it's not a horror book. In recent years, probably the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, Stephen King, well, maybe he's always done this, I guess, but he's branched out into kind of crime noir type stories that have no horror, no supernatural elements to it. And this is one of those books, and it's a really great book. And the thing that really kind of reinforced to me when reading this was that Stephen King is a pretty fantastic writer. I mean, he just not only does he have great dialogue and great plots, but he just knows how to really construct a book and make it compelling, make it difficult to put down, and just have a satisfying ending. And this is a great book. It was I think I read it in like 2 days because I just couldn't stop reading it. And it's just to kind of set it up, it's about a serial killer. No, it is about a hired
serial killer. Yeah.
No, it's about a hired gun who is basically and it's funny because he makes fun of this in the book, but he is one of those, I'm going to do this one last job and then I'm out kind of thing. I'll do this one last hit, this one last contract hit, and then I'm out. And they actually make fun of that trope. The character does in the book, which is really fantastic. But it's that's I don't want to say too much more because it's like an ogre. It's like an onion. The more layers you peel off of it, the more there's there. I will say though, even though it's not a horror or supernatural book, there is a very distinct reference to one of his horror and supernatural movies at several points in this book, and you'll know it when you see it. And the folks that are fans of this particular story will get a kick out of it and the way it's presented. It's pretty good, but he's famous for that. I mean, everything. I think every book he writes has some kind of reference to either Randall Flagg or one of his previous stories, and this does too, and it's pretty great. But it's a good book. I highly recommend it. Everybody should read it like right now. So there you go. That's my pick. Billy Summers by Stephen King.
Yeah, cool. I feel like if you talk about the King universe, that Randall Flagg exists. He's canon in every Stephen King story. He's just always out there, right?
Yeah, I actually want to reread this book because I didn't think about that when I read the book, and I don't remember any analog to Randall Flagg in this book, but I'm sure he's there somewhere. So I want to reread it and see if I see anyone that is described much like Randall Flagg. So
yeah, I'd like to read it too. It looked pretty good, and you're not the first person to say that it was an enjoyable read. I haven't read Stephen King in a while, so maybe it's time to revisit him. I'm a fan, so I will definitely give it a try.
Check it out. Yeah.
I wonder if there's an audio. I wonder if there's an audiobook version. That probably is. Okay, so my pick is a movie. It may surprise you.
Oh, really?
Some people are hating on this movie a little bit, of course, but that's okay. I don't care. I like Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and I don't care what anybody says. My pick this week is the action revenge assassin movie Kate, which is just dropped on Netflix. I just watched it last night. It has, like I said, Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it, and newcomer Mika Martineau as the little girl, and Woody Harrelson, of course, ever reliable Woody Harrelson, doing, yes, I think, decent Woody Harrelson work in this movie. It's basically, the premise is Kate, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead, is I guess you could say a contract killer who gets poisoned and has a certain amount of time to live, and of course wants to exact revenge on all the people that caused her to be dead. So throughout the film, she's trying to stay alive. And yes, I feel like I've seen that trope before, but sure, she does such a great job in the part, and the action is very well done. She's so interesting as a character and as a person, and there's some actually pretty good humor. And the girl is really good too. They have a good, and the other thing that I loved about this, it all takes place in Japan, okay, which adds a sort of a level of exoticness, which you don't see every day. It wasn't all filmed in Japan, but a lot of it was filmed in Thailand, which probably was cheaper. Yeah. And of course LA, but I liked it a lot. LA. It was fun. It was really well done. The guy who directed it was the guy who directed one of the Huntsman movies, Snow White Huntsman, but he's a visual effects guy, and you can tell there's a lot of visual effects work in this thing. I mean, I could tell, and you probably could too, but that didn't bother me. What people always say, or what I always say, actually I should say, is that every movie doesn't have to be like a perfect piece of art, but it has to have something, at least for me, that's interesting or fun, or just watching something that's put together well. I wasn't bored. I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the action, and it was fun. It was like the Transformers movies or something. It's somewhat mindless, and yeah, you've seen a lot of this before, but it's well executed, and that's a big deal for me. So, because you see so many things that are amateurish. Like I was thinking about this about Kate. I was thinking about Gunpowder Milkshake when I was watching this.
Okay.
Gunpowder Milkshake is sort of a similar kind of thing. It's female killers, whatever. But that to me felt kind of sloppy and ham-fisted, a lot of it. Yes. And it didn't work for me. But this actually is done so much better than that. And so this is like the flip side of that coin, where it's a polished, professional, well-done film. And yeah, again, you've seen it before, and it's not really breaking any ground. But, Mary Elizabeth Winstead is awesome. and Woody Harrelson's really good, and the kid is good, and it's just I enjoyed it. So I would say watch it.
Sometimes a movie only needs to just be a movie, and it
Right,
doesn't need to be anything profound or life changing. And so, I like movies like this, and I will definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what you think about it. The other thing is, if you want sort of a more elevated version of this trope, watch Kill Bill.
Right,
Right,
exactly.
That's a sort of higher version of this. That's what this aspired to be, was Kill Bill. But then you're talking about Tarantino,
Right.
who I would say is an artist. I hate to use that word, an auteur even. You know what you're getting into with a Tarantino film. It's classic, Tarantino. But this is sort of like someone said, it's like John Wick meets Die Hard meets Collateral meets Kill Bill, which is kind of true in a way. And I have no problem. I like all those movies. So
right.
that's fine with me. And I think that I would watch more movies with Kate, except, she's dying in the movie. So
Don't spoil it.
I won't spoil it. Yeah, okay. It's interesting. I mean, there's ways they could bring her back because, they could, I'm sure.
It's a movie. Of course they could.
But. Yeah. If it does well, I'm sure they'll figure it out. But
well, now you just spoil the movie. I don't need to watch it now. I know what happens.
Oh, well. You know what happens in the first 5 minutes, so.
I'll still watch it, but.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a spoiler, I guess. I apologize, people. But, she gets poisoned. What else? What am I going to tell you about it? She gets poisoned.
Right.
Okay. So, it's not a surprise, but it's the journey, Joe. It's the journey.
That's the important part. Yes.
So find the Flickcast at Apple Podcasts and at Spotify and Google Podcasts and all the places you find those things. And please give us a review or a rating on Apple Podcasts in particular. And if you don't have an Apple device, I totally understand. You can do it on Spotify or Google or wherever you feel like doing it. Stitcher, any place like that. Ratings are always appreciated.
Yes.
And patreon.com/theflickcast. If you want to throw the show a few bucks, that's great. And you can find Joe at What Joe Writes. You can find me at Chris Yu on the socials. And you can find the Flickcast, of course, at the Flickcast and at the Flickcast website, coincidentally called theflickcast.com.
Which has gotten a refresh and looks great.
Which has got a refresh, yeah. 10, 12 years later, it's got a refresh. So
yes.
We put a new coat of paint on it. It looks better.
We did, yes.
So cool. All right, so for Joe Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks so much for listening.